Growing up, the first thing that comes to mind is the tears on my mom's face. She was tormented by my dad's mother, my grandma. Back then, I didn't understand why this happened so often to Mom. I wondered, why is Grandma so mean to Mom? When Grandma passed away, I was relieved. Little did I know that history would repeat itself with me. But hey, I'm not a woman who just cries about it. I'm Chloe, a 37-year-old working at a mid-sized company. I've been dating Daniel, a coworker who's 2 years younger, for 2 years. Soon after he proposed, we discovered I was pregnant. We were overjoyed, as we had almost given up on the idea of having kids. Daniel was thrilled too. We decided to postpone the wedding and just get legally married for now. But things changed. Daniel's mom, Grace, who was happy about us dating and said, "An older woman is a great match," changed her tune. Nowadays, they call it a shotgun wedding, but let's not kid ourselves. "You lured Daniel into this, didn't you?" she said, staring at me coldly. Grace had lost her husband 10 years ago. Daniel was the only man in the family, and she adored him and relied on him. So she thought I, an older woman, had trapped her son. "Daniel makes good money, and he will inherit our home. You just wanted to marry up," she said. But honestly, they're not wealthy, and the word inherit is not really applicable. Moreover, Daniel has an older sister who was already married and living in the family home. Daniel himself has clearly told Grace that he doesn't plan to live in his inconvenient and remote hometown. Still, in Grace's mind, the eldest son is supposed to inherit the family home. "So, you're pregnant. Fine, but make sure you give birth to a boy." She pressured me again. In the prenatal tests, we learned we were having a boy, and Grace was overjoyed. But I had a bad feeling about it. Then, at 4 months, we discovered they were fraternal twins. One of each, a boy and a girl. This intensified my fears that Grace would favor one over the other. Perhaps due to all the stress, I was warned of an elevated risk for a miscarriage and was admitted to the hospital at 7 months. That's when Grace chimed in again. People these days are so weak. I had my share of difficulties during my pregnancy, but I never ended up in the hospital, she told my husband, who visited me every day after work, accusing me of being a useless wife. To make matters worse, she even began to doubt that the children were Daniel's. "You're 37 and pregnant, that's odd enough. Plus, you're at risk for a miscarriage. Those can't be Daniel's kids." She harassed me with her twisted logic. Even after the obstetrician explained that pregnancies and deliveries involving twins inherently come with more risks, Grace remained unconvinced. Eventually, I had a C-section to deliver the twins. And yes, Grace had something to say about that too. Once the anesthesia wore off and I was clearly in pain, she said, "A C-section is just the easy way out. They say moms who never endured the pain of labor can't truly love their kids." The pain after a C-section is no joke. This time, a nurse intervened, telling Grace, "About 70% of moms with twins have C-sections, and it has nothing to do with the amount of love for their children." That shut her up. But apparently, she still complained to Daniel. Thankfully, Daniel told her off. "Don't pretend to know what Chloe is going through. You've never had twins. Stop insulting her," he said, and I was moved to tears. But even after we returned home, Grace's harassment didn't stop. Their house is about an hour's drive from ours. She would take a taxi over and then expect me to cover the fare. While I was busy caring for the twins, she would complain. "You can't even serve a drink to your mother-in-law. You're so incompetent." When both babies started crying at once, she'd say, "They're as noisy as you'd expect from your children." Always finding something to complain about. She has no idea just how hard it is to take care of twins. I was exhausted, running on fumes, and could barely stand on my feet. Even so, Daniel defended me, saying to Grace, "Why don't you try looking after the twins for just one day, Mom? You'll understand how tough it is for Chloe." Back then, I had quit my job when I got pregnant, so I didn't know the details, but apparently the company where Daniel and I worked got acquired by another firm. Daniel's department was eliminated, and he was transferred to an area he had no experience in. His salary dropped, and the new company didn't approve of overtime, so he was earning only about 2/3 of what he used to make. What's more, he brought work home because he couldn't finish it during office hours, and would work late into the night. Despite all this, he bathed the twins, changed their diapers, and even folded the laundry. He was the epitome of an involved dad. That's why he understood how hard it was to care for two kids at the same time. Whenever Grace was at our house, he would always keep an eye on her to make sure she didn't give me a hard time. I was truly grateful. 3 years later, I decided to go back to work. Diapers, clothes, and meals for the twins were more expensive than we thought, and living on just Daniel's salary became quite a struggle. We took the twins to separate preschools. One was dropped off by me, and the other by Daniel, and I picked them up. I explained the situation to my company, and they let me leave an hour early. We were making it work. Grace had offered to pick up and drop off our son Andrew, but we declined. She had been showing favoritism toward Andrew ever since he was born, so we wanted to keep her away as much as possible. But there was no way to prevent her from showing up on weekends, taking a taxi to our house. She would arrive carrying bags full of toys, clothes, and treats for Andrew. When I tried to say, "Grace, it's nice that you buy things for Andrew, but please don't neglect our daughter Sophia," she would just ignore me and say, "Sophia looks just like you. She's not cute at all." The kids began to notice the difference in how Grace treated them. Andrew became clingy to Grace, while Sophia started hiding whenever she saw Grace. Once, Grace even took Andrew back to her house when Daniel and I weren't looking. To make matters worse, she told her daughter, Ava, that I was dumping Andrew's care onto her. Ava called us angrily, but it took Daniel explaining the situation to clear up the misunderstanding. But now Ava was upset, thinking Grace valued Daniel's family more because they had a son. The relationship became tense. The turning point in this ongoing feud between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law happened one weekend when the kids turned 5. At the time, I used to visit my parents' house on weekends. I'd get home around 8 p.m., and there was Grace, standing in the doorway, fuming. "So you leave your kids and go have fun on the weekend? You call yourself a daughter-in-law?" "I'm sorry. I had some things to take care of at my parents'. Daniel said he'd watch the kids," I replied, as I hurried to the kitchen and put a frozen hamburger patty in the microwave. "What time do you think it is? A hamburger now. You're gonna give us indigestion. And it's frozen. Could you be any lazier?" Grace yelled. "Actually, it's a homemade hamburger I'd frozen last Sunday. It's filled with veggies and just a little meat, so it's easy on the stomach. It's safe to eat at night." When I explained this, Grace hesitated for a moment, but then said, "Still, you're the wife. You should be able to serve fresh cooked meals to your husband. This is all happening because you're working." But we still can't make ends meet. With the kids growing up, more money will be needed for food, clothes, and education. "Well, Daniel is earning well, isn't he? He works for a big corporation since his old company merged. His salary has to be good," she argued. In reality, his salary dropped. Daniel explained the reason to Grace. He used to be a department manager in a mid-sized company before it was absorbed in a merger. He was then demoted to a regular employee. Moreover, the company's culture doesn't favor overtime, so hardly any extra money there. "So quitting my job is out of the question. We can't save anything for the kids on Daniel's salary alone. Grace was still not convinced. Chloe, you got another job recently, right? It's not been many years, so it's practically a part-time gig. Quit that job, she insisted. Actually, Chloe makes twice as much as I do, Daniel revealed. Grace was stunned. What? That can't be. Still skeptical, Grace finally heard the truth from me. While I make less money at my full-time office job than Daniel, I supplement our income on weekends. I upload videos to a particular site, all from my parents' home computer. The videos are all about raising twins. In them, I share the struggles and strategies of raising our 2 kids, recommend toys and foods, and even talk about fashion choices. Originally, I was just sharing this information on social media, but people started reaching out and saying things like, "There isn't much info on raising twins. You've been a big help." Or, "If you have any product recommendations, please share them." Daniel saw this and suggested that I try posting on a platform where we could monetize the content. The channel got great reviews, especially among expectant mothers of twins. Once I started responding to their questions via video, it became even more popular. After a while, baby product companies began reaching out. Now I get to dress the kids in their products and use them for feedback and video reviews. I only need a few hours on the weekend for this. In these days, I'm making around $3,000 to $4,000 per month. You're kidding, right? I've never seen you do anything like this. Grace didn't want to believe it, but the reason she's never seen me do this is because I work from my parents' house. I do it there to focus, away from the distractions at home. Sometimes I take the kids with me. My parents love to play with them. Seeing how happy my parents are when they're with their grandchildren makes me feel pretty good too. Now that Grace knows I actually make more than Daniel, she suddenly gets all sweet on me. Well, well, a capable hawk hides its talons, huh? You're the woman Daniel chose, after all. Grace is laying it on thick because she's not getting along with Daniel's family, the Avas. They're annoyed with her for constantly praising Andrew and buying things left and right. It turns out she's in a tough spot since the property is now under Daniel and Ava's name. She probably wanted to move in with us and figured pestering me would elevate her standing. Now she knows she has a lower standing in our household too. She's suddenly humble because she can't afford for Daniel and me to dislike her. But it's too late for her attitude adjustment. And recently, even Sophia has started to rebel against Grace. Just the other day, Grace made a comment about Sophia, saying, "Who needs a girl? They're just money pits. Wish I never had such a foolish granddaughter." Sophia retorted, "Well, that means you and your mom must be foolish too, since you're both women." Seeing the annoyed look on Grace's face, Daniel and I couldn't help but burst into laughter, thinking our daughter really told her off. There's no way we could ever live with Grace under the same roof. "I'm sorry, Grace, but I have no intention of living with someone who belittles and disrespects Sophia and me," I said. Later, Daniel spoke with Ava and found out that Grace had also been cold to Ava's 2 daughters, pressuring Ava almost daily to hurry up and have a boy. Apparently, Ava's daughters also disliked Grace and wanted nothing more to do with living with her. In the end, Grace moved back to her parents' home, where her sister's family lives. But with her attitude, it seems she's disliked by everyone in that household. Ava told us she's been getting daily complaint calls from Grace, who pleaded to live together again. Eventually, Ava blocked her number. Poor Grace. As for us, we decided to move to my parents' home before our kids start elementary school. We sent a text to Grace saying only we've moved, and we've cut off all contact since then. Now, including my parents, Our family of 6 enjoys a lively life every day. Daniel and I are discussing continuing our video streams for a while longer and saving money to renovate our house.